The rain tapped gently against the window pane as Emily sat at her small wooden desk. Her fingers curled around a slightly worn-out pencil. The dim glow of her bedside lamp illuminated the piece of paper in front of her, the blank space waiting to be filled with her thoughts. She sighed, brushing a strand of golden hair behind her ear, then looked down at the envelope beside her. It was addressed to a soldier, someone she had never met, someone fighting in a place she couldn't even imagine. But that didn't stop her. She picked up the pencil and began to write. Dear soldier, my name is Emily. I am 10 years old, and I live in a small town with my mum, dad, and little brother, Toby. My teacher told us we could write letters to soldiers overseas, so I thought I would write to you. I don't know who you are, but I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for everything you do. She paused for a moment, tapping the pencil against her chin. What else should she say? She wanted to make the letter special. Outside the autumn, wind howled softly, shaking the branches of the old oak tree in her backyard. She could hear the faint sound of the television from the living room, where her parents were watching the evening news. Emily didn't like watching the news. It was always full of stories about war, people in danger, and things that made her stomach feel heavy. But her teacher had said that soldiers often felt lonely and missed home. Maybe her letter could bring a little warmth to someone far away. She continued writing, I hope you are doing okay. I know it must be really hard being so far from home. If you ever feel lonely, just know that there are people here thinking about you. I am one of them. She smiled a little as she imagined the soldier opening the letter, maybe even smiling back as they read her words. It felt like magic, sending a message out into the world, hoping it would reach someone at just the right time. When she finished the letter, she carefully folded the paper and slid it into the envelope. She wrote, "To a hero," on the front in her neatest handwriting. Then, holding the envelope against her chest, she closed her eyes for a moment, silently wishing that whoever received it would feel just a little less alone. The next morning, Emily's mom helped her take the letter to the post office. As she watched the postman drop it into the bin, she wondered who would read it. Would it be a young soldier, someone older, maybe someone who missed their family just as much as she would miss hers if she were far away? Days passed, then weeks. Emily almost forgot about the letter, getting lost in schoolwork, weekend trips to the park, and baking cookies with her grandmother. But one chilly afternoon, when she arrived home from school, there was an envelope sitting on the kitchen table. Her name was written on it in bold, unfamiliar handwriting. Her heart leaped. Emily, her mother said with a soft smile. I think this is for you. With wide eyes, she picked up the letter and carefully tore it open. Inside was a sheet of paper with slightly rough edges, and at the top, in strong, careful handwriting, were the words, Dear Emily, you don't know how much your letter meant to me. She swallowed hard, gripping the letter tightly. As she continued reading, she felt something deep inside her shift, something she couldn't quite explain. The words on the page were filled with gratitude, kindness, and something else, something almost like hope. She had written a simple letter to a soldier, but she never expected the soldier to write back, and she never imagined what would happen next. Emily's hands trembled slightly as she held the letter, her eyes racing over the words. The handwriting was neat, but firm, as if the person had carefully chosen each letter. She swallowed, reading on. My name is Sergeant James Carter, but you can call me James. I'm stationed far from home, in a place that looks nothing like the neighborhood I grew up in. Some days are harder than others, and there are moments when I wonder if anyone back home even remembers we're out here. But then, your letter arrived. Emily, you don't know how much your words meant to me. When I read that, a 10-year-old girl from a town I've never been to is thinking about us. It reminded me why I do this. It reminded me that even in the hardest times, there are people out there who care. Thank you for that. Tell me more about you. What do you like to do? What makes you smile? I'd love to hear more. Emily pressed the letter to her chest. She had hoped someone would read her letter, but she never expected this. This wasn't just a simple thank you. It was real. It was personal. That night, she sat at her desk again, the same worn-out pencil in her hand, and began to write back. Dear James, I'm so happy you got my letter. I didn't know if anyone would. I hope you're doing okay. Since you asked, I love to draw. I draw everything. My family, my dog, the tree outside my window. Sometimes I even make up stories and draw pictures to go with them. It helps me feel happy when I'm sad. What about you? What do you like to do when you're not being a soldier? She finished her letter, sealed it, and sent it off the next morning. And so, the letters continued. Weeks passed, then months. Each letter from James gave her a glimpse into a world so different from her own. He told her about the desert, the long nights, the times he and his fellow soldiers shared stories just to keep their spirits up. But there were also things he didn't say. Sometimes Emily could sense it, something heavier between the lines. She could tell that some days were harder than others, that there were things James didn't want to talk about. And then, one day, the letters stopped. Emily waited. Every afternoon, she rushed home from school, checking the kitchen table for an envelope that never came. Days turned into weeks, and worry began to creep in. What if something had happened to him? What if he was hurt? She didn't know who to ask. She had no way of finding out. All she had was silence. One evening, as she sat on her bed, staring at the last letter James had sent, she made a decision. She grabbed a fresh sheet of paper and wrote the only words she could think of. Dear James, are you okay? She sent the letter the next morning, but deep down, she wasn't sure if it would ever reach him. The waiting was unbearable. Every night she stared at the ceiling, wondering if James was somewhere safe, if he had read her letter, if he was ever coming home. Then, on a cold winter afternoon, when she had almost given up hope, an envelope arrived, but this time, it wasn't James's handwriting. It was different, neat, professional, almost distant. Her heart pounded as she opened it. Dear Emily, my name is Captain Harris. I am writing to you on behalf of Sergeant James Carter. I wanted to let you know that James received your letters. They meant the world to him. He often spoke about the little girl who reminded him of the kindness that still existed in the world. I regret to inform you that James was injured during a recent mission. He is currently recovering and unable to write, but I wanted to reach out because I know he would want you to know he's okay. He asked me to tell you something. Tell Emily I didn't forget about her. Best regards, Captain Harris, Emily. Clutched the letter, her chest tightening. He was hurt. He couldn't write, but he hadn't forgotten her. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she wasn't sad. She was relieved. He was alive, and now, more than ever, she knew what she had to do. Emily wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. James was hurt, but he was alive. That was what mattered. She read the letter again, holding on to the words as if they were a lifeline. He hadn't forgotten about her. He wanted her to know he was okay. She grabbed a fresh sheet of paper and started writing right away. Dear James, Captain Harris told me you got hurt. I don't know how bad it is, but I hope you're resting and getting better. I was really scared when your letters stopped. I thought maybe, well, I don't want to think about that anymore. I'm just happy you're okay. I wish I could do something to help. I know I'm just a kid, but if there's anything I can do, please tell me, even if it's just writing more letters. I will write as many as you want." She sent the letter the next morning, hoping that somehow it would reach him. Weeks passed. Winter faded into spring. Emily still wrote to James, even when she didn't get a reply. Some days she would sit by the window, looking at the mailbox, wondering if he was reading her words. Then, one evening, as she was helping her mom set the dinner table, the phone rang. Her father picked up, and Emily wasn't paying much attention until she heard his voice change. "Wait, who? James? Sergeant James Carter." Emily's heart stopped. She turned toward her father, eyes wide. He looked at her, just as surprised. "Emily, it's for you." She rushed to the phone, grabbing it with both hands. "Hello?" A warm, familiar voice came through the line. "Hey, kiddo!" Emily gasped. "James." He chuckled, though there was a roughness to his voice. "Yeah, it's me. I had to pull a few strings to find your number. But I couldn't leave you wondering forever, could I?" Tears filled her eyes. "Are you okay? Are you home?" "I'm getting there," he said. "Still in recovery, but I'm safe now. Your letters, they got me through the toughest days. You have no idea how much they meant to me." Emily sniffled, trying not to cry. "I thought you forgot about me." "Never," he said. Not for a second. They talked for a long time that night. James told her about his recovery, about how the letters reminded him that there was still good in the world, still people worth fighting for. Emily told him about school, her drawings, even the silly things Toby had done. It was like picking up right where they left off. Before they hung up, James said something that made her smile. "Hey, I have a promise to keep. You once asked me what I like to do when I'm not being a soldier. Well, I guess you'll just have to find out when I visit." Emily's eyes widened. "Really? You're coming here?" "Of course," he said. "I owe my best pen pal a visit." And he did. A few months later, James kept his promise. He arrived in town, walking with a slight limp, but smiling as if nothing could bring him down. When Emily saw him in person for the first time, standing in her front yard in his civilian clothes, she ran straight into his arms. "You're really here," she whispered. "I told you I would be," he said. That day, they sat on the porch for hours, talking and laughing. Emily showed him her drawings, and James told her stories, happy ones this time. It wasn't just a soldier meeting a little girl who had written him a letter. It was something deeper, a real friendship, built on words and hope, on kindness and courage. And as they sat there, watching the sun set over the quiet town, Emily realized something. Sometimes the smallest act, like writing a simple letter, could change someone's life in ways she never imagined. And sometimes it could change her own.